Have you ever wondered if your government is experimenting on you? Hello and welcome to another one of my videos. I am Alex and I am the Wandering Englishman. In today's video we're going to explore how the US government has secretly experimented on its own citizens. Let's begin our journey back in 1931. We find ourselves at the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Investigations. This is where they infected human subjects with real cancer cells. Dr. Cornelius Rhodes established the US Army biological warfare facilities in Maryland, Utah, and Panama. This is where he and his team began a series of radiation exposure experiments on patients in the government and civilian hospitals. But this was the 1930s, you say? Well, it doesn't mean it's right, does it? And it also shows that they did experiment on their own population. 1 year later, it looks like the US government was looking at syphilis. In the Tuskegee syphilis study, 200 black men who were diagnosed with syphilis were never told of their illness and were used as human guinea pigs in order to better understand the symptoms of the disease. None of the men received any kind of treatment and only 74 survived. In 1935, the US government looked into dietary deficiencies. Millions had died of pellagra, a dietary deficiency in poverty-stricken black populations. The US Public Health Service finally acted to curb the disease and admitted that it had known the causes of pellagra for more than 2 decades prior. I guess it wasn't in their interest to solve those problems back in 1935. In 1940, malaria. In order to gauge the abilities of the experimental drugs designed to fight malaria, 400 prisoners in Chicago were infected with the disease. Sometimes you can have a useful prison population, but that doesn't make it right. In 1942, at the height of the Second World War, mustard gas was experimented with. 4,000 servicemen, mostly Seventh-day Adventists, who were conscientious objectors, served as human guinea pigs for mustard gas experiments. After the Second World War, the US government continued experimenting on the population. In 1947, the same year of the Roswell crash, the US government conducted some radioactive injections. The US Atomic Energy Commission began administering intravenous doses of radioactive materials to human subjects. In the same year, they tested with psychedelics. In its efforts to understand and evaluate LSD as a potential weapon or truth serum, the Central Intelligence Agency administered dosages of the powerful hallucinogenic drug to human subjects, civilian and military personnel, often without their knowledge or consent. A new decade, but it still didn't stop the US government. In 1950, they continued to experiment with radiation. With nuclear weapons still in their infancy, the Department of Defense detonated nuclear devices in desert areas and then monitored unsuspecting civilians in the cities downwind from the blast for medical problems and mortality rates. That's nice of them, eh? Don't worry about that big blast over there. Nothing to worry about. In the same year, 1950, the US government was experimenting with bacteriological warfare. The US Navy sprayed a cloud of bacteria over San Francisco to test how a large city would respond to more lethal biological attacks. Many residents became ill with pneumonia-like symptoms. 1955. Biological agents. In an experiment to test its ability to infect human populations with biological agents, the Central Intelligence Agency released bacteria in the Tampa, Florida area. In 1956, it was the US government's turn to experiment with yellow fever. Mosquitoes were infected with yellow fever, then released over Savannah, Georgia, and Avon Park, Florida. The US Army disease specialists posed as the public health officials testing area residents for the side effects. The swinging 60s, you'd think they might have stopped testing on the human population, but no. In 1965, they played with dioxin. Inmates at the Holmesburg State Prison in Philadelphia were dosed with dioxin, the toxin chemical component of Agent Orange used in Vietnam. 1966. This time it was time to experiment with germ warfare. More than 1 million civilians were exposed to germ warfare when US Army scientists dropped light bulbs filled with bacteria onto ventilation grates throughout the New York City subway system. A new decade once again? Was it time for the US government to stop testing on its population? No. The same year Star Wars: A New Hope was released, 1977, they experimented with contamination. Senate hearings revealed that between 1949 and 1969, 239 highly populated areas, including San Francisco, Washington DC, Key West, Panama City, Florida, Minneapolis, and St. Louis, had been contaminated with biological agents. 1978, hepatitis B experiments. The Centers for Disease Control specifically asked for promiscuous homosexual males when it tested an experimental hepatitis B vaccine in New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. 3 years later, in the same cities, the first cases of AIDS was confirmed in homosexual men. 1990, it was time for the US government to experiment with measles. The Center of Disease Control inoculated more than 1,500 6-month-old Black and Hispanic babies in Los Angeles against measles. Later, the center confessed that the vaccine was experimental. 1995, biological agents. Evidence surfaced that the biological agents used during the Gulf War had been manufactured in Houston, Texas, and Boca Raton, Florida, and tested on the prisoners in the Texas Department of Corrections. This is just some of the testing the US government has conducted on its population. And the US is not alone. Governments all over the world conduct testing without the population knowing. Usually this comes over at a later stage, but sometimes it never reveals itself. Could it be right now we are all test subjects for some chemical weapon, some biological weapon, some potential vaccine? Who knows, but what we can know for certain, never underestimate what our leaders will do to us. Anyway, if you like this content, click subscribe, click that like button, and I'll be sure to see you in the next video. Like I say, that will either be politics, travel, or maybe I'll show you a little bit more conspiracy. Who knows? Until next time, keep progressing and stay safe.